very good evening and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Gugulethu, Cele. You get one every month, but do you really understand your payslip, all those deductions and what pay as you earn actually means? Joining me today to shed some light on this topic is Yusuf Nanabhay. He's the Head of Product Development at Momentum Employee Benefits. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
Yusuf, it's a complicated one, and I guess one that obviously appeals to a lot of South Africans and those across the continent. But understanding your payslip, I take it this is a document worth quite a bit, because whenever we apply for credit, that's the first thing that financial institutions actually want.
Definitely. Thanks, Gugu. When you get your payslip once a month, and I think it's one of the things that we all did when we started working. You got quoted across the company and you got quite excited. And then when you got your first payslip, you went, ooh, hang on, that's a bit lower. So where did all that extra money go?
Yeah.
And it's really, I think, what the purpose of what we've done at Momentum and why we've embarked on this project called Moteo Financial Dialogues was really to go out to ordinary South Africans, to get them to actually understand their payslips and understand what are the deductions that are taken out from it. Which of those deductions are mandatory, which of them are voluntary, and really to get them to have a grip of that payslip so they can take control of their finances and really embark on their journey towards financial wellness.
I want you to walk us through some of the major deductions, but I take it the shortfall that a lot of South Africans do is that you get a job, as you say, you get quoted across to company, and tax is maybe the major cost that we actually take into account according to our various tax brackets. Yes,
definitely. So when you get your payslip, there's some deductions. Some of those deductions are mandatory, and those would be something like tax, UIF, if you've got a garnishing order, maintenance order, etc. Those, your employer doesn't have much of a choice. They have to take it out. So we have many members coming to us saying, well, I don't want to pay my tax. Okay, that would be quite nice, but we can't do that. So that's a mandatory deduction. On top of that, the employer may decide to give you some voluntary deductions. So those would be things like your retirement fund, risk cover, so your life insurance, funeral cover, etc. And those are voluntary. But they form an important part of the holistic financial pictures, because as we know, for most South Africans, those employer-sponsored benefits are the only benefits that they have. So if something happens, that's where you go to. And it's important that members start appreciating that, so they don't try and reduce their pensionable rates, just to get their take-home to increase. Because if they're doing that, they need to understand what are the impact is that going to have on my financial wellness, on my retirement, and if I die or get disabled, how will that influence the benefits that I get? So it really is a very important discussion and something worth having for many South Africans. And unfortunately, many South Africans don't take the time to really understand that payslip and understand their deductions and their benefits.
That's true. I want us to walk through the kind of deductions that probably need to be prioritized. As you make mention of, people can't necessarily reduce their pension fund contribution and maybe shouldn't be heading down in that direction. But when it comes to UIF, is there a certain percentage that needs to be paid by the employer and by the employee? When it comes to pension, does it change annually on a particular increase, and does it happen voluntary or not? Does there need to be some kind of consultation and monitoring of these deductions on one's payslip?
So most of the time when a member gets their first job or when they change jobs, they'll select a certain pensionable salary and a certain contribution rate. So that's really, to explain that in a bit more detail, the amount of money that you put towards your retirement and your risk benefits. And I think there you need to really speak to your advisor and to determine what are the benefits that you need. If you've got a lot of dependents, a lot of family members, you may be worried about what happens if you die. So how much money is there to look after them? If you don't have many dependents, you may not want to have as much life cover, for example. Your retirement fund is another one. South Africans need to save towards their retirement. I just want to share a very frightening statistic, is that currently in South Africa, under 10% of South Africans can really afford to retire.
Under 10%?
Under 10%, and now that's actually a scary statistic. So that means that 90% of all South Africans, when they reach the retirement age, will have to depend on government, or family and friends. And that's really not something that we want to encourage. So, it's a really scary statistic. If you look at even on the insurance side, we speak about something called an insurance gap, and that is what cover do you have relative to what you need, dependent on your age, your family dynamics, etc. South Africans are underinsured by over 50%. So from a financial wellness perspective, I think South Africans are really in a dire situation.
Does that happen though, Yusuf, because there's confusion about what all these policies do? We hear of the life cover, funeral cover, and there's often a misconception that this is the same thing, or even the unemployment benefits, but I'm talking more from a dread disease kind of cover, as well as a retrenchment if you do lose your job, that kind of cover. Do we maybe not understand what all these various products actually cover?
I think you hit the nail on the head, Gugu. When it comes to understanding your products, understanding different financial products, there's a vast gap of knowledge. And I think that's why Momentum has embarked on this project called Mater Financial Dialogues. And it really is a one-of-a-kind initiative from Momentum to really bridge that gap and to get to understanding. So what we've done is that we've set up 20 different radio slots across 10 different community radio stations, all across the country, speaking in Zulu, Sotho, Setswana, and really to try and understand what it is that we've got on our payslip. And we've gone through a host of financial topics. We start off literally understanding what your payslip is. We move on to the different products. What is retirement? Okay, how do you save for retirement? We even moved on to what is the difference between a funeral policy and life cover.
Yeah.
You know, really to try and in first home languages, to try and get them to understand, to get people to understand their benefits so they can make the best choices. And we touch on, you know, various topics, things like most people will come to us and say, but I don't earn enough. How do I save? Okay, and to go down to those things like budgeting. So how do you budget? How do you then get the best bang for your buck, so to speak, so that you can take control of your financial wellness?
On the topic of financial terminology, though, it's interesting you mentioned that obviously on the back of the payslip, your employer is the first point of reference that a consumer will go to say, look, this is what I need to understand, explain it to me efficiently. If your employer is not doing a good job at that, does this obviously heed the call for a financial provider or financial planner to actually come into play here?
Definitely. I think a financial planner is a key part of this whole process and this whole journey that you embark on, because it really is a journey. It's something that you should be doing when you start working and right until the day that you retire, and probably even after that. And that financial advisor should be someone there to hold your hand through that process. I think the financial world is complicated, it's complex, there's lots of terminology, there's lots of differences, there are lots of different players in that market. And it's really trying to understand what is the right one for me. There's no one size fits all, unfortunately. It needs to be a discussion. Things change as well. You know, people have children, people have families. And at those times, you need to constantly revisit this. So we always say that you need to be speaking to your financial advisor at least once a year. You know, put down all your finances and speak to a qualified financial advisor. I think that is also quite important. A lot of people don't speak to qualified financial advisors. They speak to their friend at the bar. Okay? And that really isn't the best source. Unless your friend at the bar is a financial advisor, that normally isn't the best place to get your advice from.
Yeah, I'd be worried about that, huh? Telling me how to manage my money when we both have drinks in our hands?
Definitely not the suggested route. So that's why it's important that you go and see financial advisors and speak to them and really tell them what are your needs, what are your goals, and how do you best get to those goals.
And you've hit the nail on the head on something that I think is so important, is how everyone's situation is unique versus their counterparts. And maybe people tend to forget that. I want us to explore, you know, the different age groups and major life changing moments that can determine and maybe change your path when it comes to your reaching your financial destiny, and maybe reconsider some of the products that you need to add on to that.
Yeah, so when someone starts working, typically there's not a lot of dependence, okay? You know, probably single, and at that point you probably don't need a lot in terms of life cover, but you may require things like disability. So what happens if I get disabled and I can't work? But at that point it's very important to also start saving from retirement then. Because of the power of compounding, the power of investment returns, the money that you save there tends to just grow and grow. And that's, I think, an important source of your retirement funds when you retire, is the money that you saved when you're young. When you get married, normally there's another dependent now, so then things change a bit. You know, if you start having children, then you've got more dependence. So there you need to, you know, touch on that again. Also, when you're younger, you can normally afford to take a bit more risk when it comes to your investments. Yeah. So try and really, you know, go for a bit more risky investments. As you get closer to your retirement, you may want to then start looking at something a bit more conservative. But it really is, it's a yearly discussion. And it's also important then for them to, you know, for members to really look at their financial advisor and tell them when they're in difficulty. You know, what are their goals? And how do they best fit the right products? Because there's a whole host of products with different tax benefits, you know, different product features. And how does that all fit together as part of your holistic financial plan? Because it's not just one element. You need to look at all different parts of it.
Yusuf, is it ever possible to be over-insured?
Yes, I think it can be. If you've got, you know, a lot of life cover, for example, I'm just using that as an example, and you don't have that many dependents, I think that's the case. But I think that just goes to show that why it's important to have somebody who's there who can really assess your needs. Because often, you know, you tend to buy things just when you see the adverts, and without really understanding how much you actually have. Because that money then can be better channeled towards different products. And what we sometimes find of many members is that they're over-insured on one product, but underinsured on another. And I think if you can get that balance right, you know, then you're on the route towards your financial wellness.
time for us now to recap on the takeaways from this discussion. We've certainly said quite a lot, Yusuf, but maybe from the endeavours by Momentum to get the education out there, what do the viewers tonight need to remember about tonight's conversation?
I think what the viewers need to remember, if there was a few takeaway points, is one, I think the responsibility for your financial wellness sits with you. Okay, you can't pass that on to government. You can't say it's somebody else's job. You need to take control of that. And I think the first step towards taking control of that is understanding what you've got, okay, understanding what you need. And I think hand in hand with that is really to go and see a financial advisor. It is really important that you have a qualified financial advisor to take you on this journey that is quite a long journey, and it's one that goes every year. And then also to just continuously be diligent, be dedicated towards that plan, and review it constantly. And I think if they can do those three things, don't take out your money every time you change jobs, preserve that money, and contribute towards your retirement funds, I think you'd be in a good way towards your financial freedom.
And like you say, it's a dialogue, it's a conversation. What you don't understand, ask and get further explanation on it.
Certainly.
Yusuf, thank you so much for your time this evening. Well, that's where we'll leave it for Personal Finance tonight. A big thank you once more to Yusuf Nanabhay, who's a product development actuary with Momentum. Do remember that we want to hear from you, so get tweeting and send us your comments or suggestions to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410 or to myself @Gugulethu on Twitter. Until next time, have a wonderful evening.